You are live. Welcome, everyone, to our Monday night Moshiach Shir. L'chaim l'chaim, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehakol niyeh b'vorei. Okay. Tonight's class is dedicated towards Mashiach. The Volchus Galus of the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach. It's time to get out of this Galus. It's been long enough. Long enough. Let's get cracking. It's a long season. A lot to go over. A lot of interesting things to discuss. And of course, that today is Memorial Day, so we want to give a special blessing and a special honor to all of those who have served in our military and armed forces. God bless you. And we should have peace in the world. All right, we are on Parshas Shalach. This is a very deep, serious parsha. A lot of stuff going on. Without further ado, let's get cracking here. Okay, Aleph. Dubar kama pa'amim edus hahaluka the Kriyas HaTorah the Parshiyos Hashavua. Sha'av shabakol Shabbat korim Parshas Achat. V'Torah hashayich u'zimiuchad l'zman zeh. V'kol yom yimei hashavua lomdim helek u'mafarsha shach u'michad yom zeh. Okay, and as we said many times recently, that the Torah portion is connected to. Wait, hold on. The division of the reading of the Torah is connected to the Torah portion of the week. That we know that every time we read the Torah portion, there's a relevance to what's going on, and also how it's divided every single day. We know that every single day, there's that's part of our chitas learning. The Torah is divided into daily sequences of learning, and each one has a relevance to that particular day as well. We'll call Parshas HaTorah. We'll call Chelik Prati Shabo. Kasher Gam. Nevertheless, even though they're divided in the daily sequence, and each one has a relevance to that specific day, the Parsha of the Torah is divided specifically, is connected also to the entire Torah. Because it's literally one Torah. Okay, as we're reading the Torah portion from the beginning to the end, we know that Rebbe speaks about this many times, that since we only learn, for the most part, each Torah portion once throughout the year, there are some that we read more than once due to Yom Tovim coming. We have to double up on it. But generally speaking, there is only one Torah portion we read per week. And therefore, not only is there a connection to the Torah portion related to the week we're learning it, but it's relevant for the entire year because we only learned one Torah portion per week. Therefore, we see there's a connection to not only what we're learning for the week, but also the day we're learning the specific part of it. And also the entire year, how this is going to affect this energy it's going to bring forth for the entire year. Okay, and this is emphasized, especially the Rebbe says we see in this week's Parsha of the week, Parsha Shalach. Parsha Shalach, oiskais ve'iniyachat, Parsha Samaraglim, ha'ha mishluchas Samaraglim. It's one long continuation of unfolding of events. It's the Parsha of the Meraglim, the spies going out, ha'ha mishluch Amaraglim, and the mission of the spies. Halichasam u'biyoisam, they're coming and they're going, or they're going and coming, I should say. Divrei teshuvuasam, the Moshe Aaron call Avis ben Israel. The answers and how they responded and replied to Moshe and to Aaron and to all the tribes of the Jewish people. And all of these events are continued in one long sequence up until the point of the punishment of the Jewish people. All takes place in this week's parsha. A lot going on. בהמשך לזה גם בפרשת הנסיכים, כי סבאו ארתם משבויסכם. In the continuation we see throughout the parsha related to the journeys to Eretz Yisrael, to the land. Yisrael Shel Hashem v'yayit nenesech, and that's Sha'af when Chet Gezerah Alehem, and the decree and the sin. Esar Lahem Shechanas La'aretz. Sipor Achad Aruch Shemish Tara. Ari Roy Psuki, Roy Chalke of Parsha. Asher Kedei Lideha Enino Hasipor Kulom. Lo Maspi, Lo Moid Chedach Echad Parsha. And let's read him the Layman Hamshach Bashar Haluchi Parsha Atsu Inin Kulom. Shavazam Mudgash Helak Parsha Hen Parsha Echad. Okay, so we see that this entire Parsha is one long continuation. It's like one long story. And part of that continuation, part of that story, is divided into all these different events that unfold. Nevertheless, it is one long continuation and one story, and it's all connected. The Rebbe says, despite that the entire Torah portion is all about the spies going out, coming back, the events that unfolded connected to the spies. And then all of a sudden, at the end of the Torah portion is plop, parshas of tzitzit, all about the specific mitzvah of tzitzis. And it says the mitzvah of tzitzit is connected to all the mitzvot. That's the mitzvah of the garments Jewish men wear, little threads hanging out from their corners. The Karasa is called Mitzvah Hashem. Minyan Gamash Yishal Tzitzit Shishimei Ois Shmona Chaitim Chamisha Kishrim Tiriad. We know that the Gematria, the numerical equivalent of tzitzit, is 600, and then of course you have 8 strings and 5 knots, corresponding to a total of 613. Which is the amount of mitzvahs. That's why it's a general mitzvah, it's called. And therefore we see, just once again emphasizing, it's one Torah. So we have to understand a couple of points. Aleph. Ha'achdus b'Torah. Parsha Shlach Dafka Keshurim in Teichen u'Rova Parshas Inin Amaragli. Okay, since all the matters of the Torah are precise, this is emphasize the unity of the Torah in the Parsha Shlach specifically, where it's connected with the whole sequence of the spies. And Kasher Hashekel Hazman Jirbo Karim B'Torah Parsha Shlach B'Siyom Shal Chodesh Sivan Kalakaman. And also, all right, so we have to see how this whole sequence of the spies is relevant at all times, and also the connection to the fact that we read this parsha at the end of the month of Sivan, which we're in now. Okay. Base. Now we're going to go through, and the Rebbe is going to elucidate 6 differences between the spies of Moshe and the spies of Yeshua. And then with Hashem's help, we're going to cover these differences throughout the Sikha, and a lot of profound insights as to the differences between these spies and how it relates to us and our lives as well. Very important to discuss, of course. So first we have to explain the beginning of this concept of sending out of spies. So we have 2 sequences of sending out spies. We have one sequence of sending them out in this parsha, and then we also have a discussion of sending out spies in the Haftorah, of this week. ספר בו עדו שילוח מרגלים על ידי ישוע. יש בה כמה שינויים לגבי המספור בפרשת עדו שילוח מרגלים על ידי משה. So in the parsha of the week, we learn about Moshe sending out the spies to spy out the land. And in the Haftorah, we learn that Yeshua sent out spies. And now we're going to go through all the differences, the 6 differences. Aleph. Okay. Meraglim the Moshe namar shalach lecha. Before Rashi, the doisecha. Ani einu mitzvah lecha im teretzah shalach. So first of all was the manner in which they were sent out. We know that Hashem did not command Moshe to send out the spies. He said that the asecha, according to your doubt, according to your knowledge, according to your thoughts. If you want, you send. Im teretzah shalach. In other words, I'm not telling you what to do here. Hashem's telling Moshe, you make the judgment call and do whatever you want. If you think it's fitting to send them, send them. You don't. Masha'ain came around in Yeshua. Vadai lo asad Yeshua midwas rak shehat tzivehu alchim. Kamova parshais. Shla achri hakol kol shehay shurata mishlach maraglim midas shom Moshe. Lo yeshua shlach maraglim midas. So we see it's not the same with Yeshua. That Hashem commanded Yeshua to send out the spies. Versus Moshe, where he said it was optional. That's one difference. Base. Second difference. But Moshe kasiv shlach lecha aneshim. Daikar. V'lo maraglim. With Moshe, it said specifically, the word was used was not maraglim. Maraglim is spies. With Moshe, the word that was used was anashim, which means men. And these men were not sent to spy. They were sent to look at the land. That was for Moshe. So Moshe's group were called Anashim, not Meraglim. They were men, not spies. And they were not sent to spy. They were sent to scout out, to tour, to look at the land. Not the case with Yeshua. With Yeshua, it says, Anashim Meraglim, spies, specifically. The Chafor es ha'aretz. The Chafor es kol ha'aretz. Literally to spy, to dig into, to check out really what's going on in the kishkas, if you will, of the land. So that's the second difference. Third difference, Gimel. Baraglim de Moshe, Namar Ishachad Ishachad, Namata Avisai Tishalach, Yud Beis Hanashim. Shnei Mes Hanashim Ishachad Hasheva, Be'ilah Maraglim de Shua, Namar Vishlach Yeshua, Shnei Hanashim. Moshe sent out 12 tribes, 12 men, one from each of the tribes. And Yeshua only sent out 2. Daled, the fourth difference. The Meraglim, the Moshe, Haim Nasi Yisrael, Khan Nasi Vehem. Roshei Ben Yisrael, Hama V'Elish Moisa. Ve'il Meraglim Yeshua, Namar Shnaim Anashim. Stam. Lo Ni Parasha Gasuk, Mi, Haya, Shnei Anashim. Moshe's 12 were the leaders of the tribes. The head honchos, the big chiefs, the big toes, the numero unos, the head in charge of their tribes. Whereas Yeshua, it was just two men. No highfalutin, big title leaders. Hey, the fifth difference is Shliach Maragin Moshe Ba'ofer Shal Pirsum Hein Biyachas Lebnei Yisrael Shedu Kola Al Derech Shliach Maragin. Shechazro Mishkoisam Na'amar Yeshivu Oisam Devar Eskoid V'chein Biyachas L'Yoshvei Ha'aretz. That the men that Moshe sent out, it was with great pomp and splendor, meaning that it was announced. It was a big party. It was a big announcement. They set up flyers. They posted it on Instagram and all these wonderful devices. They made a big announcement. Now we are sending out the spies, and there was a big yay, going away parade. Everyone was all excited. It was a whole big thing. Not only when they went out, but when they came back. And not only that, also when they returned. And when they were there, it was a very wide open operation. There's a guy had mehem yulach. Devadoi, the regular Achilach Misyum Haaretz, Ela Lucha Kulom Biyachad Bo'efon Abulat Lecho. Jaya. So Rechash goes to Boy, Yeshan Nei, Salah, Yishin Elohim. That Hashem made a miracle that the tribes of Moshe that no one got caught because they were so out in the open. It was a bold fanfare, if you will. It's not the case with the spies of Yeshua. He sent out a new group. Hey, V'yachas Yisrael should be Seisar Shalechem Ki Lo Ratza Yadua Kol Yisrael, without the knowledge of the Jewish people. Undercover operations. That's right, black ops. And also when they were returned, they went directly to Yeshua. It wasn't like the men that Moshe sent. Those spies came back and they made big announcements. Everyone knew when they were coming, everyone knew when they were returning. Not the tribes of Yeshua, the spies of Yeshua. They went on the down low and returned on the down low and went directly to Yeshua to report. Okay. So the tribes of Yeshua went on the down low. It was a secret operation, as we said. They went out in quiet, and they returned in quiet, and they did their entire operation in a undercover, clandestine way. Complete opposite from Moshe's. Vav, and the 6 differences, the Meraglim de Moshe, Halacho Big Voli. The spies of Moshe went all over the place, wide and far, throughout the whole land. They scoped it out. As Yericho at small have spiku the Torah, Kivash was a Laila, Jonah with Ayat Shal Rachab, and doing the Rachab or Hadlan. Okay, fine. So the 6th and final difference are the spies of Moshe went for 40 days, went throughout the whole land, covered the entire sequence of the whole land. Oh, 1 second, I don't want to do that. Oh, wow. It's not the water. And the tribes and the spies of Yeshua barely entered the land. They came in, they gave a peek, gave a kook, and they went out. So those are 6 differences that we're going to speak about between the tribes of Yeshua and the tribes of Moshe. Let's dig into them. Gimel. Let's have a point to understand a little bit deeper. Pualas, Amaraglim, the Moshe of Yeshua, Him Pualas, Yoinim El, Mitzarafot, Zelazeh, Meshlimot, Zeh, Mitzurich, Mitar Echad, Kivish, Nechas Taretz. So one point that connects these things to is that the sending out of the spies of Moshe, which we're going to call them spies just for general sense, but they were actually called men and not spies. Their job was not to spy. And the sending out of those of Yeshua, despite all their differences, they had one common goal, to conquer and enter the land. Hadama. So first we have to preface what's going on. There are two goals of a spy, if you will. One, the tzarech akivush. Kederka aboim lehalachem ve'aretz nechri. Shluchim lifneihem anashim ladas adarchim v'som v'ha'ara. V'shuvam ilchol laharim v'roish tzva v'hayros. Lifneihem v'hadarichem. Shibnu lahem v'etzer v'ezer ira yachalamot tchila u'neiza tzar ayah noach v'kabosh es ha'aretz. So the first mission, or this first goal, is basically conquering. How to actually conquer and take over the land. More of a military operation. What's the way that we're taking this joint over? And the second is regarding how to enter the land, to settle after it's conquered. שידוע ויחרו בתבוסה של הארץ לזה שיגידו להם כל בני הארץ לשמחם ולא יסיים ולא חפץ גדול. In other words, so you have to have the military operation, and then you have to have the what should we say, the housing operation, or the functional operation. So one is, how are you going to conquer this place militarily? How are you going to take it over? How are you going to overcome those who are guarding its borders and are in its fortified cities? And the second operation is based on how you're going to then settle the land once you're there. Where you're going to set up shop, where your subdivision is going to go, where your school is going to go, what you're going to use for your water source, where you're going to build things like that. More planning functions. There's to say that the ones that were sent out from Moshe, there was not so much there sense a need to conquer the land. That's not why they were sent. Black hat off, yeah, nice. They were not sent to conquer it. They were sent to scout out the land. The das hadarchim u'movari, to check out all the different cities. What grows? What's a good place to set up shop? Where? To what are the good parts of the land? Where are your rivers? Where's your water sources? Where are you gonna build your cities? Things like that. That's why the tribes of Moshe were originally sent. Because everyone knows the story. They did a no. They made a little boo-boo. Not good. And the tribes of Yeshua, on the other hand, Yishlachem Ragin Yeshua lo yatzrich acharas or tachanoisar amalas haaretz, and the tzrich kivosh haaretz. They were not sent to figure out what's going on in the land and what to build where. They were sent to conquer. Okay. Dal. Now let's explain a little bit more. Yeah. So, according to the request of the Jewish people, they wanted to send the spies to figure out how to conquer that sucker. Moshe, on the other hand, really wanted to scout it out. But the Jewish people were getting a little nervous, having a little bit of a suffix, a little Yetzer Hara. Amalek is entering in, and they started having doubts. הטעם הדבר יש לו בפשטוס, כיוון שכיבוש הרי לא היה כדרך כל כביש הארץ בדרך הטבע, אלא היה הקדוש ברוך הוא, כדברי משה. Hashem Elokeichem hoilech lifneichem, lechem lechem hoilech lifneichem. Hashem said, Moshe said, hold on a second. Why do you need to scout out the land on how to conquer it? That wasn't Moshe's objective. But the people were not listening to Moshe. And Moshe is basically telling them, hold on a second. Hashem, your God, is going before you. He's going to conquer this land. He promised you he's going to conquer this land. What do you need to figure out how to conquer the land for when God already told you he's putting your enemies into your hands? And so the story goes on. Shlichoisam shahamaraglim Yishlach Hashem Moshe the Torah haaretz, Yisrael es haaretz. The rest says Tiv haaretz. So Moshe sent out the first group. When Hashem said to Moshe, look, if you want to send, send. Moshe said, let me send. Not to, God forbid, figure out how to conquer the land, because God already promised us that he's going to give the land into our hands. But Moshe wanted to see the qualities of the land. So he said, you know what, it's not a bad idea. If Hashem putting this land in our hands, let's go check it out. Let's see what it's about. Let's see where our new homes are going to be, where we're going to plant our vineyards, where we're going to set up our school programs, all of the fun things we get to do when we build a new city. That was his purpose, to see the goodness of the land, its advantages and qualities. Not only that, he wanted to check out the people there. In other words, Moshe was also wanting to see how the land is affecting the people. In other words, a lot of times you could look at people and their place and see how the place is affecting them. And then from that, you can get an idea of what type of place it is, right? Like when we lived in Israel, there's a huge cat population. Supposedly, the story goes when the British ruled over Israel, which they called Palestine at the time, there's a huge rat infestation, and so they brought in a ton of cats from England to kill off all the rats, which is how the story goes, and that's why there's thousands of stray cats all over Israel. But there's a big difference in the cats that you'll find in spots versus the cats you find in Yerushalayim. The cats in Yerushalayim, it's relatively a wealthier city. They're fat. You can tell they eat pretty good out of those dumpsters. Those cats in spots, man, they're skinny Marini's. They're skin and bones. So sometimes you look at the people and the inhabitants of the place you're going, and it gives you an insight into the type of place it is, the type of land it is, what kind of effect it's having on the people. As Rashi explains, Yesh eretz megadoilas gevurim, yesh eretz megadoilas halashim. So if the people are big, they're heavy sets, they must be eating good. This is before the days of restaurants. So if they're eating good, there must be ample eating opportunities. Trees, bushes, animals, whatever they're eating back then. Yoshe v'hana mamachanim es b'mitzvah arim. The Yorla Chazak Asarfa Kapeush Rashi Siman Nasar Lahem as Aprizin Vayoshivin Chazukin Hem Asmochin Al Hagabor Hasak. The Ariam Hatzorais Hem Yoshivin Halishim. אם רמזה יודעים טיב הארץ, אם היה ארץ מהגדולים גבוהים, ארץ מהגדולה סלשים. So Rashi goes on further to say, if the cities are closed walls, that means that people are living in fear. They're maybe not strong people. If the cities are open and not fortified, it shows that the people have nothing to fear about. There's no enemies in the area they have to worry about. So I'm just looking at an idea to see what was going on in the place. וגם זרס עליו הדבר זה פיריה. ואילו לא היה מקלקלים על ידי ההסבר שלהם, אך השליחוס, אפס כי היזם, ולא נוכל להזליז, היו כל בני ישראל נכנסים לארץ מיד בשמחה וחפץ גדול. So, the problem was, as everyone knows, the spies started adding on additional things. They started talking about all the negative things. Instead of saying how delicious the fruit is in this place, they're saying there's giants here. Look at the size of these fruits we're bringing back. And if they're giants, how are we going to conquer them? So in other words, they went off script. They started adding information that no one asked them to add, right? It's a problem. They didn't stick to the instructions from Moshe, from the leader. So when Moshe on his own sent these spies out, these men, his intention was they were going to go to check out the quality of the land. He didn't know that they got a little bit of, fear entered inside of them, and they started getting worried and having second thoughts about what Hashem could or couldn't do for them. And therefore, they started coming back, and they're like, yeah, definitely a nice place, a lot of good stuff, and a lot of big giants. And I don't know how we're going to conquer them because they have such big things there. It's a nice place, but you should see the size. And their fears started coming out. And as a result of those fears, they screwed up. And the Rebbe is saying that if they would have just entered the land, if they would have just came back and stuck to the script and came back with a clear report on how they're going to enter and dwell in the land and leave the conquering up to Hashem without any worries, they would have immediately entered the land, the Rebbe said, with great simcha and in a very easy way. They would have, because Hashem would have put them into our hands. On the other hand, the tribes of the spies of Yeshua did not go in there to check out the goodness of the land. They went in there to kick ass. Yeah, so we're going to kick some ass now. They saw what happened last time, and then they said, "No, man, we're not putting up with that. Hashem already promised that that these people are gonna fall down before us." And we're going to go in there to see how we're going to conquer this place. Because now they realized it was a whole different gig. Looking as a cooking, God, the Puala is better than a teva. Holy shliach. Maraglim, Kedercha, Boyim, Lechem, Arth Nichrim. After seeing what happened, and after Yeshua realized, and I'm sure Moshe realized too, that the first set of spies blew it, that Hashem basically was going to bring our enemies into our hands in a way of complete miracles above the nature. He was going to crush the enemies of the land. But when the tribes came back with the false, fearful report, the tribes of Moshe, Yeshua and Moshe and those spies that Yeshua sent out realized it's a whole different operation now. we can no longer rely on Hashem to conquer our enemies for us because they blew it. In other words, you only get one shot to do things l'mayla l'teva, if you will. In other words, when Hashem says go, and you go, you don't take, you go, what's called as l'mayla tambadas. You don't start, I don't know if it's going to work, and what if it doesn't work out, and what if things aren't going to be good, and that's it, you lost a chance. Now Hashem says, look, I was about to take you and bring you in a miraculous way over there, but you didn't trust me. And now that you don't trust me, well, you got to go according to the nature. And that's why Yeshua's spies realized that they now had to figure out they couldn't rely on Hashem to save them anymore. They blew that opportunity through Moshe's spies. Now they had to figure out how they're going to go there according to the nature and actually conduct military operations. Hey. So according to Yeshua, I'm wickedly tired already. We just started. Can I tell you? Okay. So according to this, we can understand specifically the differences between the tribes of the spies of Moshe and the spies of Yeshua. Hold on, I lost my place. כיוון שהסיבה שהשליח המרגלים כדרך הגויים ללחם בארץ אינו שייכוס וכיבוש הארץ על ידי הקדוש ברוך הוא. So in the time of Moshe, that it was not commanded by Hashem, that he did it on his own. One second, hold on, I got confused here. This is not relevant to the conquering of the land through Hashem. Rather, the Jewish people came to Moshe and said, hold on, let's send the spies. Even though the idea of sending out the spies was only to tour the land, not to, talk about Moshe, not to conquer it. So Moshe agreed, he acquiesced. He didn't think the Jewish people were really going to freak out. And go off script. And then the leaders of the tribes were going to come back and with all these horrible reports. And Moshe was like, all right, you guys want to check it out? Okay, I'm all for it. Let's see what's going on there. נמלך השכינה. העם יש מקום להשליח מרגלים וירוסס הטוב הארץ, ואמר לו הקדוש ברוך הוא שלח לך ועשך. ותשלח, that's why Hashem said to Moshe, if you want send, I'm leaving it up to you, to your knowledge. היינו שמעת הקדוש ברוך הוא אין צורך בהשליח מרגלים גם לא צורך לריאס הטוב הארץ. From the side of Hashem, he didn't need spies at all. Not to figure out how to conquer the land or not to figure out how to dwell in the land. Because Hashem is basically telling him, I'm taking care of this department. I'm not only going to kill your enemies, I'm going to set up shop for you. I'm going to do everything for you. And I already told you, it's good. The land is good. I'm going to conquer it, put them in your hands, and it's all going to be good. Hashem said it. So what's the point of sending anyone ahead of us to spy it out, check it out? שנאמר אליכם מעין מצרים, ואף על פי כן העשו של משה שיש להשלוח מרגלים שורס הטוב הארץ, כי בהיוסי רואים של ישראל, והגיש עשה צריך שלכם לשמוע על דרך טבע הארץ אנשים שראו תנחיל. since Moshe is the shepherd of Israel, and the Jewish people were saying they wanted it, they wanted to see what was going on. So Moshe said, okay, go ahead, knock yourselves out. And Moshe's purpose in sending them was that they were going to come back and say, wow, just like Hashem said, it's a beautiful place. I'm going to put my kitchen over here on the side. Everyone's going to have their own areas they're going to set up where they're going to put things. And therefore he didn't send spies. He sent normal, well, they weren't normal, they were heads of tribes, but they were not spies. They were regular people. They weren't military people because he wasn't sending them for military operations, just to check out the living spaces. And he sent out each, in fact, the reason he sent out one of the, let me keep reading the paragraph and I'll translate outside. He had כאשר קהל נשבת מיוד בשבטים ישמע, אנשים שלא יכל הארץ כולו, and therefore specifically it says that Moshe sent out one of the heads of each tribes. Specifically, so each one of the heads of those tribes could come back and tell all the members of their tribes what a good setup they're going to have, right? They each came back. Reuben, guess what? We got a choice part of this land, baby. Yeah, we're sitting right by the mountain. We're going to build a beautiful winery over here, and we're going to set up this over here. Because each one of the tribes has a certain mission, if you will, in the land. And the heads of each one of the tribes knows specifically the advantages and what's going to make their specific tribe happy. So Moshe said, okay, perfect. I'm going to send the head of every one of the tribes who's going to go back and report and tell each one of the people in their tribes how awesome things are going to be for them when we cross over into the land. That was the idea. The Arucha, the Rechava. And it says that all 12 of the tribes of Moshe went throughout the whole entire land over 40 days. They didn't just check out the specific area that was going to be geared up for their specific tribe. Well, they could have very done it. Instead, they checked out the entire land. Everything. The Kivan Shahashlicha is the Yud Beis Nasi Yisrael He Kidesh Shekol Nasi the Chol Eir Lahagatiach Ishbato Shra'a B'Mayinines HaChalchim Ba'aretz V'Tayim. I call the Majalon the Halchai Ba'aretz the Yud Beis Shvatim No Ya Yud Rahechan V'Halkov V'Prati Shekol Shever Shever. Ak Begora Yechelech Esa Aretz Loka I'll be a garab before. Yes, the Achri, Kivas art, so you shot, so I call you a patient. She the Torah's art, okay. So yeah, we saw that they didn't just each one go to their specific place, but it's a very open operation. And they all together scoped out the whole land. And therefore we know that their shlichut was very open, as we said earlier. It was advertised. It was in all the latest electronic devices back then. לא, בן נוי ולא ידיעה לכל בני ישראל, כיוון שהכוונה שלוחים היסר, בגלל לכל בני ישראל טוב הארץ. סומך עליהם רב החפץ. There's no reason to keep their operation in secret, because the intention of the operation was to check things out, not to go in there and think about conquering and what isn't or what is going to work in a military operation. So there's nothing to hide. Because they were not trying to spy anything. So there's not worried about. They were not concerned about any attention that was going to be brought to them, because they weren't going to conquer anything. They were just going to check things out. So we thought. Because Hashem, the one who was going to do the conquering, He was the one who was going to bring our enemies into our hands. And furthermore, the sending out of the spies was not in a natural way. And they were not concerned with any danger within the nature, because it was all about a miraculous thing. Hashem was the one who was going to conquer everything for them. This is not the case of the spies of Yeshua. Because they were not sent to check out the goodness of the land. Excuse me. They were sent to figure out how they're going to have to conquer this big boy in a natural way. So once Moshe's spies started blabbing a little bit through the mouth, Yeshua said, looks like we're going to have to send in the military ops this time, because Hashem is not going to be there to do the conquering for us, because He would have been if we trusted in Him, but we had a doubt. And being founded or unfounded is not relevant. All that makes a difference is they had a doubt. So fake. That's what Amalek enters into. Cools you off. Get you start to having doubt, wonder. Yeah, Hashem promised, but maybe He didn't mean it. Maybe He's going to change His mind. Whatever the negative thoughts that come in. But when Yeshua sent his guys, it was totally under operation, under the radar, secret military, black hat ops. Yeah. Only two, and not 12, not from the heads of the tribes. Since there was 12 who went through Moshe, each one trying to find out what was best for each one of their individual tribes. That was not the case with Yeshua. He just sent two regular people in deep undercover work. And nobody knew. Hush, hush. Because it was not like the previous mission that was out in the open, that they were just going to check it out. This was a straight up military operation, and he had to figure out how they're going to conquer it now according to the nature, and therefore no one can know about it. After all, that's the whole point of a secret operation. Okay. It's talking about the women who hid them, the tribes, the spies of Yeshua. One second, I'm just going to go through this quickly. go outside. Okay, moving on. Vav. Vav is Metoratzat Meha Klavis. According to this, now we can understand the general nature of this week's parsha. As explained in many places, that there was an advantage of these spies, that they were all heads of the tribes of the Jewish people. Talking about Moshe's spies now. Big honchos, not simple people. Yeah, very secret. היה במדרג הגבוה מאוד ולא רצה להשפיע עצמו למצוות מעשייה ישאר בחינס המשחס או אינסו ברחו למטה. ורצה להיות בדיבר דווקא. So I call Torah. They were very. What was the problem? Is that the heads of the tribes were doing good. They were learning Torah. They just came out in the desert. Hashem took care of their food. He took care of their water. He took care of everything. They were totally relying on Hashem. They got comfortable, if you will. ועד כדי כך שגם לאחר החטא נאמר עליהם, אין להם בחירת העולם הבא. מפני שמדרגה גדול יויסר מעולם הבא, ולכן אין עולם הבא גדול של הדברים, ואין מובן לאחר גדול על המרגלים, אין לתחם של הצלם השליח המרגלים בפועל ממש, האיך מרב באופן בלתי רצוי. One second. So the question is, how can these spies screw up so bad? I mean, they just saw the miracles that Hashem performed for the Jewish people. And all of a sudden, they're worried about all these undesirable things that could happen. What went wrong? וגם זה דבר ידוע לקומביניישן של גיבור וידוע יסתיים מהארץ הארץ. גם זה היה בפועל כל הסמר אבי משיח זמן. ונוהג כזה נתרז בזמן ישוע שאל בשמחה וחפץ גדול. אז on day מרגלים למשה. So two parts bring him a Excuse me. ועוד מקייסר, על פי פנים עשינו יהושע, וחלישתנו לתורס הארץ פועל אז הנה גדול ביוסף. עשר שעה כשרים. התחילה בכבסה בקרש של גנץ הארץ על ידי כל בני ישראל. It's very choppy, this section here, so instead of me just keep going through the sentences, I'm just going to read through it just a couple more paragraphs. And then tell you what's going outside, make it easier. Okay, skipping those brackets right there. ויש כלומר שאין זה מרומז בדיוק כמו של רש"י, או 10 שעה כאשר די חבלות צדיקים. כאשר ראש התיבות כמוצא שלו רב. שלו, דבר שהתחילה אלה עצו וחיו מנגד ולקח ומחמה, וזה הגופה כמוצא שלו באופן של מציע, היינו של שלו הוא שלו דרך לעבוד עשה ויגר על מחמה לשלו רב, בריבוי גדול ועד ריבוי שאין למעלה הימנו, זהו הרמז הדיוק, עשרה שעה קשרים, ותחל שחוסם בתורס הארץ, הוא עניין ביורה ותחתיים באופן כמוצא שלו רב, זהו כלל לעבוד זה כיבוש ונעשה הארץ רמנס ועשר ביור הארץ, זו התחתונה דסת העיר התחתונה דיר ישפך בתחתונים, ונעשה המיתוס לשלימוס עניין כמוצא שלו רב, כדי אסקף יסתרה והפך בשולחנו הרב. שהוא אור לעזר שם, אין סי ברחוב במקום החשק וסתרה אחר שלו, כל מות אומה לזה, כלל ביושר בישראל יסירון אור מן החשך ובם. Okay, so the Rebbe kind of knocks the spies down of Moshe and then lifts them back up, if you will. Basically says like this. We can't say the spies were righteous. They're not holy because they went against what Moshe was telling them to do. But on the other hand, we have to say they were kosher. And what their inner panini intention was, the Rebbe is saying now, to rehabilitate them, is even though they didn't fulfill what their ultimate job was, which was coming back with a good report, which would have allowed Hashem to conquer the land as was planned and take us completely in there in a miraculous way above the nature. Nevertheless, they left the capability of building what we call as a dir batach and setting up the stage for the subsequent work and subsequent generations of the work of Iskafia and Epachah, pushing away the darkness and transforming it to light. That if it wasn't for that work, if it wasn't for the spies coming back and getting everyone nervous, Hashem would have conquered the land in a miraculous way, and we would have entered into Israel right away. And we wouldn't have had the opportunity to do all the work of working the land in the way of a natural way, which allowed for Yeshua to go in and spy it out so it could be conquered in a natural way, which allowed the Jewish people to further rectify the land in a deeper, more detailed way, as opposed to the miraculous way from Hashem doing it. I don't know. Personally, it would have been nice if we went straight in and wouldn't have had all this gullus, but nobody asked me. Zion. Okay. Now let's explain a little bit more what's going on. And the Rebbe says, and we have to say more specifically that these two ways between the two different sets of spies, regardless of what their maybe intentions were and what their shortcomings were, they each serve to complete one another and help to bring about the completion of the work in general. The 12 of Moshe, each heads of the tribes, and the 2 ordinary men of Yeshua. First, to preface and explain the necessity of setting out 12 leaders, 1 for each of the heads of each of the 12 tribes. So what's the deeper reason for this? Since the land of Israel is divided into 12 portions, corresponding to the 12 tribes of the Jewish people. And therefore, each specific tribe has their each specific way of working the land and connecting to Hashem. They have their each unique service, if you will. And then it says, what is an example of this? We have an example of this of Yisachar and Zevulun. Those who sit and dwell in the tents, Yisachar, the Torah learnings, and Zevulun, those who go out into the world and make money, the marketplace dwellers, if you will. וישראל לכן יש לו גם חלק אחד מיוד בייס חלק בארץ שבירוי וישאר לו איפה לעבוד את השבט זה. And each one of the tribes has a specific portion of the land to rectify, to fix up, and to refine. And all 12 of these together brings up the whole land. And therefore, the land of Israel is divided into 12 portions, each one for each specific tribe, specifically corresponding to their work of rectifying their particular area of the land of Israel. Hold on, I'm doing myself a time check, so I can pace myself accordingly. 193, 216, 7, 12, 5. Pretty close. Okay. בזה צריך להבין הטעם שכל אחד מיוד בייס נעשי ישראל חלק לתורת הארץ כולו, לא רק יראה שבטי, אלא גם בהילוכים לשאר השבטים דלאחר כיוון שעבודת של שבט זה היא לחלק מסוים השייך לו, מה הוא צריך ומה הוא צריך בכך שיתרגם לזה ההילוכים לשאר השבטים, זה עבודת בירו לשייך לשאר השבטים. So, if the land of Israel is divided into 12 sections, and each one of those sections is for each specific tribe to go in and rectify and work, and therefore Moshe had sent 12 men, the heads of the tribes, to scout out what is most fitting and apropos for their specific tribe members. So why wouldn't each tribe leader go into the land specifically to his specific portion and report specifically back to his specific tribe about what was going on in that area? In other words, what was the point of all 12 leaders of all 12 tribes going through the entire land? It's not necessary. Why don't each one just go to each one's particular area to report back what's going to be set up best for his particular area? שפועל דכל נשיא לתורת הארץ כולו, גם חלקי ארץ לשאר השבטים. היא מצאה את ציווי ואהבת הרעך לרעך. And the Rebbe says they did this in order to fulfill the commandment of you should love your brother like yourself. כיוון שכל ישראל ערבים זה בזה, because we are all one. ועוד קיימה אחת שלמה. Together, we all make up the land of Israel. And furthermore, Israel, Commission Amshakas, Mavaderas, Bedargas, Attack Toina, he's Hafas, excuse me, Kalakam. The Rebbe says it's beautiful now, because all 12 together is much higher than each one in itself. In other words, through a Havas Yisrael, we're capable of reaching much higher levels than we are on our own. 1 second. Put this on over here. Carry the one. So let's just pause and talk about that for a brief 1 minute lesson. Not only is it a lesson in Ahavas Yisrael, but it's a lesson in productivity and how to do better. In other words, very easily, each one of the tribe leaders could have went to his specific portion of his part of the land and said, okay, the land of my tribe is going to be from here to here. So let me check out this area and give a specific report back to my specific tribe on what it's going to be like. Instead, they all went together and conquered all the areas. And on a simple sense, it's Ahavas Yisrael. So, we're all in this together. Why should I just look out for my one tribe when I need to look out for my brother? But the Rebbe says even at a deeper level, when we all work together to help one another, we're able to reach a much higher level than we are as if we were just doing it ourselves. In stages of growth, of personal growth, just briefly, we go from three sequences. When we are children, we start as dependents. In other words, we're dependent on our parents for food, for shelter, for basic needs. And then when we grow older, we start becoming independents and start separating us. And independence is a good feeling, right? You go out, you start making your own money, you move into your own place, you become independent. But the third stage of growth is interdependent. It's very different from codependent. Codependent is an unhealthy relationship, often found in marriages and often found in many types of relationships, be it personal or work-related, where there's negative energy that's feeding between two people or more than two people, and they become co-reliance for the other negative energy for the other person. It's like the abuser and the abused. I'm not, God forbid, saying that someone who's abused is responsible. I'm saying, like, you have a relationship sometimes where there's a couple, and one is screaming at the other all the time, and the other is they like to scream at whatever, but there's something inside that person that attracts that negative energy, and so it just keeps festering, keeps going in circles. Talking about a heightened state of development known as interdependence. So we have dependence, independence, and interdependent. Interdependent is, I'm not dependent on you, but I choose to add you and to work together with you and work with bigger groups of people, because as a bigger group, we're able to accomplish much, much more than we are if we're going at it alone. And that's what Rebbe is stressing here now. Okay, let's continue on. Now we got to talk a little bit about what is so special about the month of Sivan, which was one of our original questions at the beginning of the Sikha. That the shluchim of the Meraglim went out on the 29th of Sivan, right around the corner, 9 days away. Mugash gam hakriya the parshas of Meraglim karoy l'siyoy mimshav chodesh Sivan, chodesh the month of Torah, and we see that it's also the month of the giving of the Torah. And it's known that the rectification of the world is only able to take place because the Jewish people received the Torah. And the Torah gives us the power to do such a thing. I've got the power. Thank God I didn't go into a singing career. B'lashon HaKabbalah v'Chassidus. B'Chachma Daka is very right. Chachma is the Torah. That, and according to Kabbalah and Chassidus, specifically it's through Chachma that we're able to rectify and refine things. And the Torah is connected to Chachma. It gives us that ability. Yesh Moras to say, Shematam Zeh, Yesh Liachamaradlim, Pisyonim, Shachodesh Yisrael. Instead of Man Torah, go to the Bureau, that specifically they got sent out at the end of the month of Sivan, which is the month we received the Torah, because the Torah gave them power for them to fulfill their mission. And since that the Jewish people in the Torah, there are two levels in general. It's a level of Achdus and a level of Hitchachus, oneness and differences, if you will. Since Yisrael is a Rosh Tevas, or an acronym, it's these letters, Yud, Shin, Resh, Aleph, Lamed, which stands for Yesh, Shishim, Riv'ol, Oiseis, the Torah. There are 600,000 root letters in the Torah, corresponding to each of the root souls of the Jewish people. And therefore, each one of us has a specific letter in the Torah we're connected to. Sa'ar Oisios, the Sa'ar B'nai Yisrael Hein Mitzios Echad. Torah Echad. K'Sefer HaTorah Shorei Say Tului V'Kashtorah Kol Oisios Shavo. Just like the Torah, that it's only kosher if every single letter is is kosher. If one letter is off, the whole Torah is puzzled. So you need each letter on its own, and that's how we are separate. We each have our own individual mission. And each together, that we each have our general mission. V'yesh l'mor. Based on finding b'vira ha'elam, v'ira mitzad dargas yitachos b'toras Yisrael, v'ira mitzad dargas ha'achos b'toras Yisrael. And this is our two jobs of rectifying the world. We have the job of rectifying all the details, and also the job of the general service of rectifying the world in general. Okay, continuing on. Test. Let's get a little bit deeper and explain a little bit more according to the Torah of Hasidus and according to Kabbalah. Base Hadarga Shiva Torah. There's two levels of the Torah. We're generalizing, right? Dargas Ha'achtus and Dargas Histalchus. The level of oneness and the level of division. Hein B'chalas Torah B'mitzvahs. And they're also further divided into the Torah and mitzvahs. Torah Torah Achat. It's one Torah. Ki Torah Hi Chachmas Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because the Torah is the wisdom of Hashem. And since Shem is one, his will and his wisdom is also one. And therefore it's called one Torah. But the mitzvahs, they're divided into separate different mitzvahs, 613 different mitzvahs. 248 positive mitzvahs and 365 negative or prohibitory mitzvahs. Since these mitzvahs are given to us in order that we can rectify the world and how we need to act and work in the world. There also correspond to the 248 bones or major organs in our body and the 365 tzinois or connective tissues, ligaments, tendons, if you will. Olam katan ze adam, and a man is like a small world. And everything that God made in the world, he made inside of us. And that's why we need all 613 mitzvahs to connect our whole body and our whole being to God. And more specifically connected to the Torah itself. The Torah itself also is divided. The two general divisions are the nigla, or the revealed aspect of the Torah, and the pinimi, or the innermost aspect of the Torah. Nigla Torah, the revealed part of the Torah, 6 mesechtas. Shebo Evrim Pratin Haluchas Isra Heter. Tuma V'Tahara, Kesher Paso, Ayida, Zebira Oilam. And this is the nigla of the Torah, which gives us clarity and separates between permissible and impermissible things, holy and unholy things, what it is that we need to rectify in the world, and what it is that we're supposed to stay away from. And the divided into many divisions. Panemius Torah, but the innermost part of the Torah is literally pure godliness. Achdus is complete oneness. When you learn Hasidus, when you learn Kabbalah, you're able to connect to the oneness of God without all the divisions. And further we have a division, we see also a separation as an example in the Jewish people. We all come from one Father in heaven. And in our roots, we're all connected to the one God. The only difference is when our souls descend down into the physical bodies, and we look different. One is tall, one's short. Well, not that many Jewish people are tall. Most are short. There's short, there's shorter, there's medium short, different levels of shortness, different appearances. But this is only our physical appearance, and our souls were all connected to the one God. And more specifically, as it's connected to the service of the soul himself. We have a general division between our brain and our emotions, our head and our heart. And the key to reach oneness in our soul is bittul metzius, total nothingness. There's always a war in all Hollywood stories and books about the head or the heart, the head or the heart, the head or the heart. And there is no such thing. It's not the head or the heart. Chassidus teaches us that we must use our head to overcome the natural passions of our hearts and to penetrate into the deeper aspects of our heart, where we find complete oneness with joy and beauty and being connected to God and connected to one another. So they're both necessary. And something unique in this is that the main service of rectifying the world is from the level of the division of the Torah and the Jewish people, and also to bring about the oneness of the Jewish people with Hashem and the Torah, and a level that's above from the world. It's necessary to bring about the service through the work down here in rectifying the world. And through rectifying the world, we'll bring it to its ultimate state of completion. And then it will be revealed in the level, in this world, a level of God that's completely above from the world, with this world in complete oneness. Yud. Yesh Lamar, there is to say, the two ways of rectifying and refining the world, the general way of oneness and the divisions of individuality. This is hinted in the two different sets of spies, Moshe and Yeshua. The Torah has been called in Israel, that the Shnaim Eser, that the 12 men, each one from each tribe, that scattered out the different 12 areas in the land. This emphasizes the conquering of the land in an individual, separate way, each one of his own powers, if you will. And therefore it's referring also to the work of each one of us individually through using our intellect, our chokhmah, bina, and das, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, chabad, to elevate and rectify our hearts and our emotions. These are our individual powers, our dots connected to our own abilities and thoughts of how we're going to do things. Specifically related to our own knowledge. And this is the Torah as it's come down into the world, into our own knowledge, if you will. And therefore there's a place for differences. And Yeshua, and the spies that were sent out from Yeshua. Shnai Menashim, just two. Their focus was on rectifying the world in a level that's above division, in oneness. And this emphasizes the concept of Achdus, of oneness in the Torah. Not connected to our own individual das. And the Matziva HaKadosh Baruch Hu Eifer Shel HaKabbalas O Bebitul HaNeshama Shlomal B'Salchus. We're calling Yisrael B'Shevet. This is a level of bittul where we're all equal. Yesh Moshe Nizamuru Mazgam B'Shnei Nanashim V'Ragel Chara Shnayim Lo Shnei Masar Ki B'Havodat HaKadosh Baruch Hu Bebitul Lo B'Nagam Pratis Halchus Ta'asar Koichos Im Beis HaKavim Dechaya V'Shlishi V'Shleila Asar V'Lo Ta'asar. The two that Rebbe is saying now are connected very simple to the two levels of doing and not doing, what you should do and what you shouldn't do, not all the individualities. Anashim, Stam, Lo Nasi Yisrael, and these were not heads of the tribes, they were regular people. And therefore it says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Bebitul V'Chal Yisrael, Barachim Charash, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Bebitul. Their whole thing was bittul, complete self-nullification. So again, now the Rebbe is emphasizing, as only the Rebbe can do in such a beautiful Rebbe fashion. He always brings out the positive, didn't focus on the negativity of the spies. He talked about them. He did, he mentioned it. But he hopped right into the goodness, showing how that these are two levels and each one of us has to work in both of these levels. There's lessons from both of them. First, we have to understand that we are connected to the 12, just like the 12 tribes of Moshe, meaning we are individuals. We have different capacities for comprehending and grasping things. We can all sit through a Farbrengen and come out with completely different understandings of what happened and of what's important and how it's relevant to us. We can all learn the same sikh or the same mimer and take something out of it. We could all be given a task and say, you need to bring Mashiach, and I'm going to do it different than you're going to do it, different than you're going to do it. That's the beauty of the individuality represented by the 12 tribes, 12 spies of Moshe. And the two of Yeshua are focused more on general oneness, achdus. Yes, we're individuals, but we got to be really clear in what our mission is. And that is yes and no. God says, do this, and do this. Don't ask questions. That's what we do. God says, don't eat this, don't do this, don't do this. Don't ask questions. That's what we don't do. That is the clarity that we need to bring about oneness. And we need both. We have to constantly realize that we're part of a bigger whole, that we're all in this together, that we all have to fulfill God's will, and we all have to be loyal to the cause of why God sent us here and fulfill his will according to his will, according to the Torah and mitzvahs that he gave us, whether they make sense to us or not. And then we have to use our own individual powers, our own individual abilities to take that godly energy that we have and utilize it and pair it up with the skill set that we have unique to us to help bring redemption. Yurav. V'yomtek yoyser al pi ha'mavor b'drushi chazon. Shishneim anashim sheshlach Yeshua hein Kelev v'Pinchas. They were Kelev and Pinchas. Those are the ones that he sent out. Kelev, a Yehudi, shena asher ha'marabi na Moshe. Kivan he'eser ruach achtu acheres imo v'yomla achat. Abo Pinchas, Anoshel Eliezer, ben Aaron HaKohen, v'Shevet Levi, lama shlachat Yeshua. So he says, hold on a second. Okay, Caleb, fine, we can understand about Yeshua, but Pinchas was the son of Eliezer, the son of Aaron HaKohen. He's in the tribe of Levi. We know, Lama Shrocha Yeshua, the voice says, Haaret, the Tzrel, Kivu Yishay. Or Shevet Levi, Lo Achar Melchama Ka'asher Yisrael. We know that that's not the job of the Leviim. They don't have a specific portion in the land, and they're not sent there to do the war. So why was he sent specifically? According to the opinion of the Gemara, that in the future to come, the land of Israel will no longer be divided into 12 portions, but into 13. Very interesting. למה לא זכר ולוי בתחילך לזרע ישראל וכב ישראל לאחר מפני שמובדל לעבוד אז אשר לשרה סויב להרויס דרכיו הישירים ומשפטים וצדיקים לרבים שנאמר להם. Let's go to this quickly. יש לו להביא ברשבת ומוסיף לבוא כאשר אם דרגת האח השלמה והלכו ידבר בגמת שאחד. So the Rebbe says like this, the reason that Pinchas got sentenced from the tribe of Levi, even though Levi has no specific portion in the world to come, in the future to come it says that he does. The tribe of Leviim, meaning the Kohanim, Baruch Hashem, I'll have a house too in the future to come, will be divided into 13 portions. And why? Because 13 is the same gematria of echad, oneness. It's showing that in the future to come, even though we will have separate areas that we live in, we will reach the ultimate state of oneness and perfection with our Creator. That we will all literally be part of Hashem Himself. לכן ההלוכה שהאילם הזה להלוכה שהאילם הבא ולם הזה אדם יזר שר להבין הזה ולרשת paradise. And that's when the true oneness of God and His Torah will be revealed in the future to come. Oh, excuse me, my eyes are coming out of my head. I'm speeding up the end of this here. And God will be completely revealed in the world and clothed in all aspects of the world. And we'll see that there's nothing but Hashem in the world. And the whole entire earth will be filled with the knowledge of God, emphasizing again the unity and the oneness that will take place in the future to come. And one of the reasons why the tribe of Levi will also have a portion corresponding to the number 13, which is the gematria Echad, or oneness. Okay, the next section is on, and again, you'll have to apologize. I think I did this last time too, and I'm extremely exhausted. I have not been sleeping good. With God's help, I will get a good night's sleep tonight. The current mitzvah of the world it's very troubling for me to see what's going on in the world, and it affects me as much as I try to not focus on it because it's Hashem's business, not mine. But anyways, the next Yud base is on tzitzits. Again, just connecting tzitzits together with that it's a general mitzvah and it's connected to all the mitzvahs, emphasizing once again this concept of unity. All right, now we're moving on to Yud Gimel, and we're gonna, with God's help, head into the final last two letters, Yud Gimel and Yud Dalet, and wrap this bad boy up. Finish a little bit earlier tonight. Okay. על פי זה מובן גם בהלימד הוראה משליח המרגלים בעבודת כל אחד מישראל הדרגס הגשר נקודת אחדות ישראל שבתורה. And the Rebbe says the lesson that we can learn out from everything that we just learned and from both of these spies, even though they each had a specific mission and had a specific purpose, we as a Jewish people can connect this work of both of the spies to our individual works in this world. Including the service of the details of all the Jewish people in our divisions. Excuse me. One from the other. specifically as it's connected to our das, our knowledge, individual. Excuse me. Ain, v'asehem shavos. And in our level of das, it's not the same. We have different knowledges of God. We have different things we comprehend in a different way. The Rebbe says like this: even though we think differently, we have to put our individual differences aside. We can use them on how to serve Hashem in our own way. They should not be used to determine what we think is right or wrong, and God forbid think somehow we know better than God. So it's necessary that our individualities must be penetrated with a point of achdus and oneness that is above any separation. And this is expressed through Ahavas Yisrael and Achdus of Yisrael, love of the Jewish people and unity of the Jewish people. We must be together. And therefore we must consider others and what their needs are. Their spiritual needs and their materialistic needs. And according to what it says with our speech, that we say every day before prayer. That we should receive upon all of us together, the mitzvah of love your fellow like yourself, because we need to be one. United we stand, divided we fall. And we see this in even more clarity with the general division of the two types of Yidden, those who learn Torah and those who go to work. Okay. And we see this the Torah. Those who are working in the world, they're making money. Those who are sitting and spending their time to learn Torah. It's necessary, therefore, to unify together one who learns Torah and one who's giving tzedakah. An example, tzedakah is saying tzedakah gam is a chus sorisha hazoyis. Over there, Israel, we see this with the Yidden. Some God made some Jewish people with the ability to be rich, and the others learn. He gave the ability to learn Torah, so we must share. Those who learn Torah can learn Torah in the merit of the rich people, and the rich people can give tzedakah to help those that are learning Torah. There's one example of how we can use our individual talents to come together. We see this also, the importance of learning Rambam. Brings together unity. And especially when we're all learning Torah. This also brings about further unity amongst us. And namely, especially through spreading out the innermost aspect of the Torah, the Chassidus and Kabbalah of the Torah, which really manifests into oneness and focuses on our oneness together and not our separation. And we see that this was brought to fruition through the leader of our generation, from spreading out Chassidus to the four corners of the world. The Moshe of the generation, Misham, Choftzim, that spread out the teachings of Chassidus and Kabbalah to the furthest corners of the world. And we see that Chassidus is literally spread out to the four corners of the world, that has helped brought together all the oneness and the knowledge of God. Yud Dalet, the final letter. And so shall it be for us. Mamish, immediately. Yom Zeh, today. Yom Shabbos Kodesh Parsha Shlach. Miskayam is before Mamish. Vishvora b'Parsha Shavua. Yashar lahem shiknasei la'arts. We should immediately, together, enter the land of Israel. As it says in the Haftorah, the saying Hashem b'yadeinu es kol ha'arts v'gam l'mogolo kol yeshvei ha'arts b'fanenu. We should all have the land and dwell in it in a peaceful way. Kol michad, generally and specific. Shagam v'ragai ha'galos acharono oimdim b'techav shel shleimus ha'arts. We see in the final moments of the Galus the importance. Somehow the Rebbe in his prophetic vision knows exactly what's going to be going on in the world. That we stand together strong for the completion and the complete land of the Eretz Yisrael. And that this land of the Jewish people was given, the land of Israel was given by God to the Jewish people. And nobody, not a Jew or a Goy or no one in this world, has any business telling us what to do in our land. How dare they, chutzpah, tell us when we're supposed to protect ourselves. We should fight back. We shouldn't fight back. Let our enemies blow missiles and kill us. We are using missiles to protect our people, and they're using their people to protect their missiles. And they're telling us what we should do? Kushman Tuchas, it's none of your business. This is the land of Israel. It belongs to the Jewish people. God gave it to the Jewish people, and it must remain in together completion, or will bring destruction to the entire world. And not a single piece of the land of Israel is to be sacrificed or conceded to the goyim, to the nations of the world. Do you see what's going on? Have you looked at a map? Israel is a dot surrounded by 27 Arab countries with billions of huge land. Take your people and use and absorb them in your land. They don't want them. They're pawns in their game of this sick game of trying to get public opinion to hate Jews. It's a different subject. We'll talk about it another time. Unfortunately, yes, there's a lot of anti-Semitism in the left. But anyways, let's continue. The Rebbe says the land of Israel must be complete. And therefore the Jewish people will go to the land of Israel, and it will be a complete land of Israel. That all the tribes will return, and will divide it into 13 portions for the 13 parts of the land. The whole land of Israel will be complete. And the holy city of Jerusalem will be complete. And that's where the third temple will be. And we'll bring up our karbanos, and we will sing a new song to Hashem. And what is this new song? It's the song of the Geula. And we will together learn the new Torah that will come out from Hashem himself. And no man will need to teach one another. Because the whole world will know me. And mainly the main thing is all of this should take place immediately and happen right now, immediately. And always remember a couple important things that we could pick up from this sikha. There's a lot, and I'm sorry, a little bit too tired to go into it in a little bit more depth this evening. But one thing, always have to remember that when we get a chush, one of the differences in successful and not successful people is when you get a feeling, a gut feeling, when you know that Hashem is guiding you in a certain way, you need to go l'mayla l'teva. Just jump. Know that God is going to be with you. And when he's with you, you will see miracles. When you believe and you have faith and trust in God, you will see miracles. But when we pause and we let our cold mind get in the way, our Yetzer Hara starts cooling us off and saying, I don't know, what if it's not going to work? And we start thinking of all the negative things that can happen. It doesn't mean it's too late. but it's too late for miracles. Now we have to go according to the channels of nature and work our tuchuses off and do things in a lower level. We'll still be successful, but it's much better to jump with God in a miraculous way. Anyway, God should help us all in a miraculous way. We should all have an end to any of our difficulties or challenges. And we should have the ultimate goodness and peace in Eretz Yisrael in the full Gadlus of Melech HaMashiach right now. God bless you. Yechiyah Melech HaMashiach. See you all in the Beis HaMikdash.